Hi, Ms. Nichols. It's Ms. Crimmins. How are you this evening?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. I just wanted to do a quick sound check. We are in the live meeting, so that's all I needed to do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. We will give folks just a minute to make sure everyone is here, and we'll get started in about 2 minutes.
Ready? Yes. Can you all tell us how the owl sounds in the board meeting room?
I can hear you pretty well. Can we hear the other folks in the boardroom?
Sure.
Can you hear me okay, Hillary?
Yep, I hear you well, Carrie.
How about me?
Yep, you're good.
Awesome.
All right.
Bonnie?
I moved into another room.
Well, we can hear you great now.
Yeah, he says, there you go. So,
Perfect.
Everything. Win-win.
You guys good? You need any adjustments? I'll be right next door.
Okay, thanks, Don.
I am almost ready. Okay. Is everyone able to hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, well, good evening. Tonight is Monday, February 22nd, and I am calling this board work session to order. Orange County Schools Board of Education pledges to our families, students, staff, and the greater community to conduct our business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for our fellow board members, citizens, and staff. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy towards all staff members and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings, and a moment of silence will be observed before we begin our business. Public comment will be held after the board receives the presentation for each agenda item tonight because this is a work session. As we come together tonight, may we remember this month and every month that Black history is not a concept to elevate once a year, but rather Black history is American history and woven into the deeds and actions of every community, including this board and this school district through many generations. May we remember that our words and actions have the power to create and perpetuate harm or the power to help heal and move the community a step forward. History will judge us as a governing body for our actions or inactions at difficult crossroads. May we remember that we educate our students on the traditional land of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation and reflect on building authentic community who works honestly to repair generations of harm and terror. We will now have a moment of silence. Thank you for that. And now I will pass it over to Dr. Felder and Dr. Keeling for our recognition.
So good evening, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, to all board members, staff, students, and families. Good evening. As you know, February is, if we could advance the slides, please. There we are, thank you. As you know, February is Black History Month. Black History Month, also known as African American History Month in the U.S., is an annual observance in not only the United States, but in Canada, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands. In Orange County schools, schools were invited to share lessons and activities and events that they are engaging in celebration of this month. And so tonight we'd like to share a video submitted by New Hope Elementary School. Mr. Jones?
That would be Amanda Bunch will present that.
Okay. Can we go back to the Happy Black History Month slide from New Hope? We actually have two videos tonight, so we want to share the first one. On slide 3, please.
If everyone would bear with me just a moment and be sure to mute while we're queuing up the video.
I don't know about all of you, but I'm so proud of our students. And as the saying goes, out of the mouth of babes. We heard it for ourselves, just how important it is to celebrate Black History Month. And so thank you to New Hope Elementary School for sharing. We appreciate it. All right. Well, we have more to share tonight. Orange County Schools has a very long history of spelling bees. Spelling bee competition can result in several benefits. In addition to allowing students to engage in healthy competition, spelling bees provide valuable educational and fun experiences for our students, including learning grammar, enhancing vocabulary, and developing a range of cognitive skills. So at this time, we want to recognize this year's spelling bee winners and staff coordinators. So I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Gammon, Executive Director, Curriculum and Instruction, to do the honors. Dr. Gammon.
Thank you, Dr. Felder, and good evening. Each year, Orange County Schools 3rd through 8th grade students participate in the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which begins with a classroom-level competition followed by a school-wide bee. Each elementary and middle school determines one spelling bee winner. Tonight, we recognize Orange County Schools' 10 school spelling bee champions who are invited to represent their schools in the Duke Regional Spelling Bee in March and compete for the chance to advance to the Scripps National Spelling Bee in June. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Julie Lemansky, who is our grades 6 through 12 English Language Arts Literacy Facilitator, and she's going to discuss the spelling bee winners tonight and present those folks. So, Ms. Lemansky.
Thank you, Dr. Gammon and Dr. Felder. Good evening, board members, staff, students, families, and community members. And thank you again for the opportunity to share tonight. As Dr. Gammon stated, I have the honor and privilege of presenting to you the 10 students that have been named Orange County Schools Spelling Bee Champions. To elaborate and offer some context, each year, all Orange County Schools 3rd through 8th grade students participate in the spelling bee, which begins with a classroom level bee and culminates with a national competition. This year, in light of the closure of school buildings, Scripps designed a virtual testing platform so that the bee could continue despite these circumstances. Thus, in November and December, all Orange County Schools 3rd through 8th grade ELA teachers conducted classroom level spelling bees, and the winners of each classroom bee advanced to the school level bee, which took place last month, the week of January 11th through 15th. When the testing window closed on January 15th, each school's spelling bee coordinator reviewed the results to determine their school's top speller. While we'd typically be celebrating our winners tonight with a pizza party in the boardroom, this year our top spellers had trophies, certificates, and prize bags delivered to their homes by their school spelling bee coordinator. Tonight, please join me in recognizing and congratulating the following 10 students who have been named Orange County Schools Spelling Bee Champions. These 10 students are invited to represent their school in the Duke Regional Spelling Bee on Saturday, March 27th, and compete for the chance to advance to the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which will take place from June 1st to 3rd. Without further ado, our champions are Jason Bush, 5th grade, Cameron Park Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Jared Wright, 5th grade, Central Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Olivia Carotenuto, 5th grade, Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Ellie Reagan, 5th grade, Grady Brown Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Valia Paterno, 5th grade, New Hope Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Giles Cotton, 3rd grade, Pathways Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Natalie Coons, 5th grade, Hillsborough Elementary School Spelling Bee Champion; Kana Gerald Hassan, 8th grade, A.L. Standback Middle School Spelling Bee Champion; Jaden Lytle, 6th grade, Gravelly Hill Middle School Spelling Bee champion. And last but not least, Luke Stitz, 7th grade, CW Stanford Middle School Spelling Bee champion. Congratulations again to all of our champions. We are so proud of you and your achievement, and we're excited for you to represent Orange County Schools at the Duke Regional Spelling Bee in March. Lastly, we'd like to thank all the teachers and the spelling bee coordinators for their flexibility, patience, and problem solving when it came to scheduling, managing, and conducting a virtual spelling bee. This was a new experience for all of us, and it certainly did not come without its hiccups, but our teachers and staff handled it with grace and patience, and we express our gratitude to you for coordinating this event for our students. And to the board, thank you again for the opportunity to recognize and celebrate our students' achievements.
Dr. Felder, are there any other recognitions this evening? Yes.
Indeed, there are. Sorry, my fingers aren't moving fast tonight. Indeed, there are. So tonight we also want to recognize February's equity warrior. So an equity warrior is a person who, regardless of their role in a school or district, passionately lead and embrace the mission of high levels of achievement for all students. So tonight, Dr. Dina Keeling, our Chief Equity Officer, will recognize this month's equity warrior. Dr. Keeling.
Good evening, everyone. So we did have equity warriors recognized at the last board meeting, but they were actually for January because we did not have recognition in January. So tonight we are recognizing the February equity warrior. At the February 8th board meeting, I talked about understanding multiple perspectives, which means recognizing that people have different points of view based on their experience and making sure that those different voices and experiences are being heard. Every day we make decisions for students, but how often do we listen to students about what they need? Last year, students from the Orange High School Student Equity Team presented to the board and requested of the board, staff, and community that we offer courses in African American history and Latino history. The students also said that it was important to them to see a teaching staff that was diverse like their student population. Students at our other high schools have also made this same request. While we're currently working on developing a Latin American history course to offer to Orange County School students, this spring, Orange High School is offering an African American Studies course. This is the first time this course is being offered in 10 years, and the first time the course is being taught by an African American. Not only is it important to hear the perspectives of our students, it's also important that we expose them to multiple perspectives because we want all Orange County School students to go out into the world beyond Orange County schools with a wealth of knowledge at their fingertips. Mr. Xavier Adams mixes educating students about the history of the United States with understanding the world and where we are today. He uses a broad approach to the subject of African American studies, where students explore everything from history, the arts, to theory, to current culture. And he does it all in this language that students seem to relate to. In this time when we question if connections can be made through a virtual setting, Mr. Adams teaches like there are no walls of laptop screens and technology glitches. The students are participating, the content is engaging, and the classroom environment is one of trust. In the equity world, we call that culturally relevant teaching. But in the education world, we just call that great teaching. And that is why Xavier Adams is this month's equity warrior. I encourage everyone to read more about Mr. Adams on the Orange County Schools website and on social media. And as always, if you know an equity warrior, please contact me so that they too can be recognized. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Keeling. And we have one final recognition for tonight. We are so pleased tonight to also celebrate CTE, Career and Technical Education Month in Orange County Schools. Career and Technical Education prepares our students to succeed in academics and careers in both established and emerging industries, and empowers all students to be successful citizens, workers, and leaders in our global economy. Tonight, Ms. Shannon Braxton, Director of the Arts and Director of Career and Technical Education, will lead tonight's celebration. Mrs. Braxton.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Felder.
Sure.
Good evening, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, all the board members, Dr. Felder, all my colleagues, and the viewing public. February is CTE month, Career Technical Education, and even during this COVID-19 pandemic, we have been celebrating CTE. We are grateful that in Orange County Schools, we have 34 classroom CTE teachers, 2 career development coordinators, and 1 district curriculum and instructional management coordinator that offer over 86 CTE courses from 6th to 12th grade. In the absence of our CTE Awards Night due to the pandemic, we've also taken this month to recognize outstanding students from our fall semester CTE courses. Daily posts on social media are celebrating the work of our CTE students from all 3 middle schools, both comprehensive high schools and Partnership Academy. Students are receiving their award certificates via their CTE teacher for the outstanding work. Career and Technical Education's state mission is to empower all students to be successful citizens, workers, and leaders in a global economy. And in Orange County Schools, we strive to meet that mission with each and every student that takes a CTE course. So we hope you are following us on our Twitter and our Instagram pages and are seeing all the great students who are being recognized this month.
Thank you so much, Shannon. All right. That concludes our recognition for tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Felder. Thank you to New Hope and to our students there for helping us celebrate Black History Month. Congratulations to our spelling bee winners, to Mr. Xavier and Mr. Xavier Adams, and thank you, Ms. Braxton, for being here to highlight CTE. So with that, do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Move to adopt tonight's agenda. This is Brenda.
Second. I have a motion from Ms. Stevens and a second from Ms. Smiley. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Our agenda has been unanimously approved. And let's see here. Then the next thing on our agenda, because public comments will follow the presentation of each item, is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve that? Although before I take that motion, I do want to highlight that the calendars that we are approving are this year's calendars, not next year's calendars. I know that even within the board, there was some confusion with myself and some other members of the board about which year they were, and I didn't want anyone at HES specifically to panic that we were pushing that date out again this year. So it was just to change a few official remote days to the fall so that we can have more in-person opportunities in the coming months. And so with that explanation, I will take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Smiley and a second from Ms. Stevens. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Our consent agenda is unanimously approved. The first item on our agenda tonight is research on school names, and I will pass it off to Dr. Keeling. Just for clarity for folks waiting who signed up to speak, we have several speakers for this item, but we will hear Dr. Keeling's presentation, and then I will recognize speakers before the board has a conversation. Thank you, Dr. Keeling.
And Amanda, if you could advance the next slide, please. There you go. Thank you.
Good evening again. Tonight, I'm going to just give a brief recap of the process for school names up until this point, and then turn the discussion back over to the board. Engaged in this review because the board passed a policy which called for the names of buildings in our districts to be examined for their origin and compliance with Policy 1030, which is our equity in education policy. Policy 1030 states that Orange County schools shall review and revise existing policies, programs, professional development, and procedures to reflect applicable laws and the district's definition of equity. The policy further states that the board will actively model its commitment to equity by aligning all new processes and procedures to applicable law and the district's definition of equity. Here I have listed on the slide the district's definition of equity, and this is the lens that was used to review compliance with Policy 1030. And so the questions that were asked as part of the review and the lens were, does the name of the school reflect interruption of systems, structures, policies, and practices which privilege some students while discriminating against other students? Does the name of the school reflect fostering a barrier-free environment where all students, regardless of their race, class, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, religion and faith tradition, family structure, geographic origin, and ability or disability, have the opportunity to benefit equally in order to succeed and thrive? Does the name of the school reflect every adult treating every student as capable of success and recognizing the uniqueness and strengths of each student? Does the name of the school reflect countering biased behaviors that cause harm to specific groups? Does the name of the school reflect countering unfair policies, programs, and practices that consistently result in negative outcomes for groups who are disadvantaged by these actions? And does the name of the school reflect negotiating, reallocating, and sometimes reimagining resources, opportunities, and support when equal distribution of these things, one size fits all, results in inequitable outcomes that do not adequately meet specific needs and interests of all groups of students? The school-based equity teams took the lead in compiling information on the origin of their school names. This information was provided to school staff, equity teams, the community, and the board for review. At the February 8th board meeting, the board asked for a timeline of the period of segregation in Orange County schools as referenced in the book, The Impact of Slavery on the Education of Blacks in Orange County, North Carolina, 1619 to 1970. This timeline has been submitted to the board as they requested. Are there any questions for me before I turn it back over to the board and to the community?
I'm not seeing any immediate questions, so unless anyone has something burning, then I will go ahead and recognize our speakers. I believe the first person on the list, I am trying to find it, is T. Bacon. Mr. Jones, could you please unmute them?
Sorry, I do not see them on the call or their phone number.
Okay, well, we will move on to the next speaker, and maybe we can just check once again at the end of the list and see if they have come back on. The next speaker is James C. Stanford.
Hear me? Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Stanford. Welcome.
As you know, I was present for the February 8th meeting of the school board. You are also all aware that my grandfather is C.W. Stanford, which the middle school back then, junior high school, was named after. Just a couple observations. I'm terribly disappointed in the additional research or lack thereof that's occurred since the February 8th meeting. It was my impression that staff would reach out and do additional research in terms of my grandfather and who he was and what he represented. And all I've been able to ascertain from my review of your agenda is this timeline that's been referred to, but not clearly not addressed. I'm disturbed by the fact that Chair McKenzie and Board Member Smiley both expressed regret at the February 8th meeting about the school board staff not having reached out to the Stanford family to seek input from the family as it relates to our grandfather, and to date, that has not occurred. 2 weeks have passed. Nobody has reached out to the family to seek input from us. I do not believe, based on what I've seen on your agenda, that any of the school board staff has reviewed any of the board's historic minutes or votes. I do know from experience, my brother and my cousin have both been to the school board office and reviewed those notes, and they're copious, they're enlightening, and quite frankly contradict some of the allegations that have been made by the equity team in terms of who my grandfather was and what he represented. You now have in front of you this misleading timeline that's now been submitted by school board staff. It's not based in fact, and in fact has been refuted by a family member, my older brother. You folks have that information in your packets, at least I hope that you do. In closing, I do not believe you have the facts or adequate research, and it appears to me that the facts don't matter in you making your decision. The family has provided you with a factual basis upon which you could consider in making your choice, but that doesn't appear to be important. I do strongly believe that some board members have made up their minds before any discussion or information was ever provided to the board by staff. I sincerely hope that I'm wrong, but sadly, I doubt it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanford. The next speaker tonight is Latondra Strong, President of the Northern Orange NAACP.
Which one of this? She's on the equity board.
Mr. Jones, will you please make sure Mr. Stanford is back on mute and Ms. Strong is unmuted? Thank you.
I'm here.
Yes, welcome.
I'm trying to figure out how to turn my video on. Or do we not get to turn the video on? Do we get to turn the video on or no?
I don't think you get to turn the video on. It's just audio.
My apologies.
No worries.
So I have spent some time doing some research on this issue because I wanted to be clear that that I did have some facts about this issue. And I will tell you that the harm to the Black community in Orange County has been a long time coming. I saw in the records that as early as 1925, Black families had begun asking for a school. And those requests went on from 1925 until 1947. And you could tell that because in the notes it would say a delegation of people, and it would comma Negro, or a delegation of people, comma colored, would request to have a school. And in those schools, the response too often was met with silence. And when it was not met with silence, it was denied. Orange County schools did open some schools for people of color back then, but too often they did not. And then we fast forward to the period that we're in question, and you still see on the night that the Supreme Court made a decision, or shortly thereafter, you see some silence in terms of making a decision to move forward and make a change for segregation. What the board had decided was they would wait for the interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling rather than make a decision to integrate. And going forward, what they did was they made no plans. They didn't change the budget. They didn't look at the schools. They didn't have discussions. They would kick the can down time after time after time instead of making a decision. And that indecision had material harm. While I appreciate that this is a difficult time for the Stanford family, I could imagine that if I were in their shoes, that it would be hard to contend with a widely felt opinion of not integrating. But it doesn't change the harm that was done. And I would ask you to consider the members of our board, the people in our school district, the students that were alive during that time that was denied an education. That's the part of the conversation that doesn't get talked about enough. It doesn't get talked about so much that we have to have Black History Month to bring up this conversation. And so as we move to fix some of the harm that's done and to improve equity in our district, I would ask that you move forward on your decision. And I hope that you consider that harm has been long suffering and making a small gesture, maybe not small to the Stanford family, and I humbly ask you to consider the family, what it was like for the other folks. But this particular issue is long suffering, and sometimes making a small change could undo some of the harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strong. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Don Stanford. Mr. Jones, is he on the call?
I don't see him on the call, sorry.
Is T. Bacon on the call at this time?
No, I don't see them on.
Then we will recognize our last speaker for the evening, Ms. Heather Redding.
Good evening. I'd like to speak on agenda item 4, which is in regards to the name change of CW Stanford Middle School. As an Orange County resident and taxpayer, I fully support changing the school's name to align with the district's equity and education policy. I was personally very glad to see that the decision to rename Cameron Park Elementary needed very little discussion, as the right choice was evident for obvious reasons. With Stanford Middle School, however, there appears to be reservations as to whether or not to rename the school. I sense that some individuals want to give his troubled legacy a pass, largely out of courtesy to his descendants. To be perfectly honest, though, these are the very same reasons that people have offered to defend Jim Crow-era Confederate monuments, and it's a decision that upholds white power. The choice seems clear, though, if you evaluate the decision before you under the equity and education policy. Mr. Stanford led the Orange County School Board during segregation and 14 years beyond the Brown v. Board of Education decision, during which he was not a champion of Black students nor their education. Your decision about changing the school name isn't about Mr. Stanford's personal character or private life, but about his governance during a time when our county's Black students were not valued. For those of you with reservations, I'd like you to consider whether you would want Mr. Stanford and his board members to lead Orange County schools today. Would you entrust them with our children's education in 2021? Would his leadership represent the best qualities of Orange County educators? Would he value our Black and brown students, teachers, and staff? Would he listen to Black parents? Could you honestly explain to our county's children of color why you think they should go to a school named after a segregationist? I think you all know the right thing to do, as hard as it may be, but I hope that you choose to vote yes on renaming CW Stanford Middle School. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Redding. Ms. Moore?
I'm sorry about that. Excuse me. Since the last meeting, I've had more time to research deeper into the facts presented by Dr. Keeling, newspaper articles, and books. The deeper I research the facts, the more it confirms the need for change to address inequities that occurred during times of segregation. Policy 1030, adopted on September 14, 2020, says, review the names of buildings in our district to examine their origin and compliance with Policy 1060. We are responsible for school and community climate. We are having to address issues of inequity because our predecessors did not. Therefore, I make the motion to change the name of CW Stanford Middle School. Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Moore, and I'm sorry, who was the second?
It's you, Brenda.
And I have a second from Ms. Stevens. I have a motion from Ms. Moore, a second from Ms. Stevens, and now I'm going to open it up for discussion before I call the vote. I realized that I overlooked a speaker, and so I would like to take a moment to recognize Edward Mann before we continue with board comments. Mr. Jones, can you please unmute Mr. Mann?
Mr. Mann, please. Yeah, just Edward Mann is unmuted.
Mr. Mann, are you here? I'm realizing that this was auto-populating backwards. There, Mr. Jones, maybe you can speak to what the issue with the list tonight. I'm also seeing that Jenny McCrae was hoping to speak tonight. If you could check her name also, and then maybe we can try Mr. Mann again.
I do not see Jenny McCrae. I do not.
Do you see her phone number?
It's okay.
Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Are you Mr. Mann?
Yeah, this is Edward Mann. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'd signed up to speak earlier, but something's going on with my microphone. But thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Good evening. My name is Edward Mann, and I spoke with you at the last meeting, and I'd like to speak with you again this evening regarding the school names research agenda items specifically related to CW Stanford Middle School. I'll remind you that my mom is Jean Stanford Mann, the only remaining child of Charles W. and Mary M. Stanford, still alive, and I'm one of 10 grandchildren in Orange County. As I mentioned in the previous meeting, our family was surprised and very disappointed that no one was contacted to provide information for the board's decision-making process. Here we are 2 weeks later, and to my knowledge, no one in our family has yet to be contacted for more information. In order to make prudent decisions, normally boards have and make use of comprehensive and objective facts and data to support their decisions and decision-making process. That doesn't appear to be the case here. Another concern I have is that the board's motion from the February 8th meeting was to, quote, come back with more detailed research on the renaming of the school and the timeline of those years, end quote. The only additional information that appears to be provided for this meeting is a highlight of the process and a timeline that does not include comprehensive fact-based information to support an informed and objective decision. It does not include a number of positive actions that were supportive of all schools and students. It seems to be very selective in its content. Our family has been able to, through some research this week, identify a number of news articles as well as board minutes that support positive actions that are not included in this information. It also appears that the board agenda for the February 8th meeting, or the meeting agenda for February 8th, has been modified to add additional documents that were not available during that meeting, and to my knowledge, the public has not been notified of this. So again, boards are usually expected to make informed decisions based on comprehensive facts and data, and not just anecdotal information. I would like again to ask that you not consider any decision related to the name of C.W. Stanford Middle School at this time, and that you again direct staff to prepare and provide a fact-based and comprehensive report for your and the public's review so an informed and objective decision can be made. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. Jones, will you please double check if Don Stanford is on the call one last time, please?
He is not.
Okay, well then that concludes our public comment for this evening. I will now open up conversation to the board before we call the vote. Ms. Hauser?
Well, I appreciate everybody's comments and thoughts. I've also done my own research with students and educators, black and white, who were with the district during segregation and integration. I even had the privilege of talking directly with retired teacher and author Rosetta Moore. There's widespread agreement that renaming Cameron Park makes sense given Paul Cameron's history, not so with C.W. Stanford, and there seems to be widespread knowledge that legal constraints along with disparities in state funding and resources were widely known as something that everyone, including the sitting board, had to live with. We live with that every day. Despite these inequities, there is a great deal of pride around our black segregated schools, especially Cedar Grove, Eflin Cheeks, Central High School, which Mr. Stanford helped to build and maintain. I am very concerned about the comments around the timeline because the board has gotten a corrected timeline from the Stanford family, and and I think we have a responsibility to get that corrected information to the public to correct the record on Mr. Stanford's actions during a difficult time. The facts also indicate that legislation legally blocked integration in North Carolina and the nation for a decade after Brown versus Board of Education, and that Chapel Hill and Orange County schools were among the first in the state and the region to integrate once laws allowed it. A more informed timeline was not in our packet, probably because our staff is working around the clock to reopen schools and didn't have the time or resources to properly research the topic. Since our board is tampering with nearly a century of local history, I believe it's important to get these facts right and raise awareness about challenging times and hard-fought battles. In my conversations, there was a resounding question about why our board cares about names on buildings rather than what's happening inside them. Leaders in our black community are especially interested in what our board is doing about disparities in funding, student achievement, AIG, and discipline that persists 50 years after school integration. That's on us. I have not found anyone, there's a couple of speakers tonight, but I haven't found anyone in the community who believes that renaming C.W. Stanford will advance our equity objectives or make our schools safer or build trust with our communities. But if we decide to pursue this, I've heard strong community support, black and white, that we need to get the facts, and there is, again, widespread support that we need to first focus on reopening our schools and student recovery, because inequities are occurring every single day in Orange County schools. And in that context, I will vote no for this motion. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ms. Hauser. Other comments from the board? Mr. Atherton?
Thank you. I wanted to start off saying I have no relationship to the Stanford family or its history. I obviously have no issue renaming the school, as I made the motion in the last meeting. Now, as I look through the data we've been given, there is no new information. At the last meeting, I asked to get information specific to what Mr. Stanford did or did not do to justify such an action. As I look through the information, nothing specific to Mr. Stanford on what he did or did not do, and it does not provide any contextual information of Mr. Stanford. I'm really struggling with the board saying without any facts on the individuals that anyone that was on the board during this time could not have done any positive work towards our community, equity, or our students based on board actions during this time versus the individuals. Our own task force statements back to the board even shows concerns for the facts, saying such things as, I would really need to know more about Stanford's proposals and actions in regards to segregated state of the county schools at this time. Another saying, if our assumptions of Stanford's learning regarding segregation are proven unfound, I see no issue in keeping it same. Another saying, did he work to advance everyone in the county or only segregated groups? But is that a fair way to judge him all these years later? And words like it appears and if he was responsible, clearly there are questions about this. I have made calls over the weekend to some of our Black community, and there is confusion about this and why we are doing this when we can't even address AIG issues in the building that have been there for decades without any board action. But we are talking about this with no facts about the person's actions or inactions. I believe it's not equitable to simply dishonor Mr. Stanford's legacy and his family names with no factual information about Mr. Stanford did or did not do versus the board during this time. If we're truly about equity, which includes all voices, we need to do real research about the facts, histories of Mr. Stanford, that time frame, the ownership, and base a decision on the fact of what he did or didn't do within his power. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. Are there comments from other board members? Ms. Smiley?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh.
Nope.
Oh, no. Ms. Stevens, you want to go first?
Well, all of that I was going to say is that I think I heard someone say that board members had not read through the minutes, and let's deal with facts and be truthful and facts of things that you know, because I know that I was in the board room the day after the meeting, our last meeting, and I spent hours reading through minutes. So I just needed to clarify that, because I heard someone say that board members had not read through. And I can't speak for the entire Black community, although I am Black myself. I'd like to say that I've spoken to people in the Black community as well. Thanks a lot.
Ms. Smiley?
There are two things that Ms. Hauser said that I want to agree with, and then I want to share why I'm disagreeing on some others. So she shared that she heard a couple of things from the Black community. One was an immense sense of pride in the all-Black schools in this district during segregated times. I know a number of board members have gone to numerous community events where people who attended those schools spoke to incredible teachers who had incredibly high expectations of students in those schools. So as we're talking about integration, there was some real loss for some people in that process, and that is true. And another thing that is true is that all of the ripple effects of this racism exist still in schools today, and that those are our most pressing problems. I won't repeat them. We all know what they are. And I think we are all here on this board to do something about that. And I don't think that we need to spend a ton, from my perspective, a ton more time getting into minute detail about what Mr. Stanford's particular role was in upholding segregation during this time period, as Orange County schools did. Some of that was at the Pearsall plan, and some of it wasn't. And then at the end, what ultimately happened was that the federal government ordered the school system to desegregate or lose federal funding, and that is why the school district desegregated ultimately completely. I think that, so to me, as I said in the last meeting, I am not here to cast judgment on Mr. Stanford's particular role. I actually think it would be pretty difficult to get really fully accurate information about that. I think it is enough to say that he has had this honor of a school named after him for 50 years. And that where we are right now, to me, is a place of saying that period of desegregation, the period of segregation, was incredibly harmful to the Black members of our community, and that he is associated with a board that oversaw that time, and that it is time for a new name for the school without sort of going deep into Mr. Stanford himself personally, but just acknowledging the pain of that time. And that I'm comfortable with that and with moving forward with the decision now, because we do have a lot of other incredibly important things to deal with.
Thank you, Ms. Smiley. Ms. Doyle?
I would like to add, I appreciate all the public comment we've had, and I do want to acknowledge that this is difficult for members of the Stanford family, but as Ms. Smiley said, this really isn't about an individual, but about a board that did uphold separate and unequal. For myself, I read the entirety of the impact of slavery on the education of Blacks in Orange County since the last board meeting, as well as numerous newspaper articles. And that book, for example, is really a catalog of all the board's actions during that time. And so again and again and again, throughout the 40s and 50s and 60s, there will be a petition signed by 800 members of the Black community, or there will be, again and again, requests made that are denied. And so it's just a really clear pattern of upholding separate and unequal. And even when integration began, our Black students weren't allowed to participate in activities and had to engage in boycotts to get attention, and then they were disciplined for boycotting. I mean, it's just a very long, painful history that didn't end right with integration, but definitely during the time when Mr. Stanford served on the board, it was a consistent resistance to integration that I think represents a lot of pain. And so I think it is appropriate time to move on with a new name for our school and make it more welcoming for all.
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. I think everyone's had a chance to speak once. So I'll just say that my stance remains the same as the last time we met. My vote reflects a belief that we must stop memorializing a time when this board as a whole was treating families and students of color as second class of citizens. This vote is not a personal indictment of the heart of CW Stanford, but rather a recognition that it's time for OCS to own the generations of harm that has faced our students and families of color here, to speak these truths openly, and to move forward into a time of healing. I do want to speak to Ms. Hauser's point about public records and just say that if anybody would like to have a public record of the Stanford's opinion and their take of this, they can request a public records request. They can hear all of the back and forth between the board and the Stanford family, and it will, highlight how board members felt as well. So feel free to make those requests, and we'll be happy to send them out to you. And with that, I will call the vote unless there are any other statements or questions or comments beforehand. Okay. Well, I have a motion from Ms. Moore and a second from Ms. Stevens. Ms. Hauser?
No.
Mr. Atherton?
No.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
We will rename CW Stanford, and that will go into effect before the upcoming school year, sometime over the summer. And our next agenda item is the renaming process and timeline, and I will welcome Dr. Felder and also our legal counsel, Ms. Eva Dubison, to help us discuss that.
Ms. Dubison, would you like to begin, please?
Sure. Board members, I emailed you last week some information about the process for renaming a school. I know that there were some problems with Assembly today. Would you like me to share my screen so that that is visible, or just speak to it?
I think it would probably be helpful for the public to see the memo, so if you don't mind sharing. Mr. Jones, could you make Ms. Dubison a presenter, please?
Great, thank you. Okay. So, board members, as I shared, you do have a policy, Board Policy 9300, which speaks to naming school facilities. There is no specific process in law or in policy for how to select a school name. You can set whatever process you choose. The criteria that are in the policy, as you can see here, sort of lists the board's criteria for choosing a name, and then just suggests that the superintendent make a recommendation and then it be read meetings. And I spoke to the superintendent about this in advance of providing some examples. So what I have is a couple of examples that have been used in other places or that might work for Orange County schools. Example one would involve appointing a stakeholder committee that would perhaps receive nominations from the public and then vet them and, provide some research and a list of finalists to the superintendent and then to the board for a final decision. And of course, as in the policy, I have included in here that there would be two readings. So the finalists would be presented to the board. The board may choose to have either a specific meeting to hear public comment or a public comment period that's devoted to that in a work session, and then not make a decision until a second meeting. The second option is similar, except without creating committee and instead just having central office staff to vet nominations from the public and winnow it down to a manageable list of finalists for the board. So I think you can review the options there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Smiley?
Well, and thank you, Ms. Dubison, for sharing this. I'd like something closer to the first one. I also shared with the board the way that they did this in Richmond, Virginia last year, which was really similar to this. So there would be, in their case, they had a renaming team for each school that included students and faculty and families, community partners. What they did was centrally they arranged a way for people to give input like a Google form like this. And then that information was passed on to the school team, which then reviewed it together and decided on 3 finalists or 4 finalists in the different cases. And then in most of their cases, the school team among those basically passed on the finalists as well as sort of a name that was favored by the group, along with sort of each one of them had sort of an explanation for why that name. And in one of the cases, I think they had two options and the superintendent ultimately made the recommendation. But I did like that the school community was really involved in sort of considering the names for the school and putting forward a kind of recommendation. And then the other part of it was they did have, and I think here as well, was some sort of public forum to solicit names as well. I think that was sort of earlier in the process before narrowing down to finalists. So I liked that approach.
Thank you, Mrs. Smiley. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. Feller. You can go and then Mr. Atherton.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mrs. Smiley. I like that approach as well because it allows for stakeholder input. But I would recommend that perhaps maybe the top 5 names or 3 names be shared with the board, and would prefer if the board makes the decision with regards to, with some parameters, of course, but that the board make the final decision, of course, with regards to school names. I just don't see that as the role of the superintendent to do that.
So in that, just to clarify, what happened in that case was the school team itself narrowed down to finalists and then said, of these 3 finalists, this is the one that we, the school renaming team, recommend. I'm a little concerned about the idea of 5 names coming to the board and then the board sort of like just picking or arguing, in the spirit of like this taking up a lot of time.
Well, it could be less than 5, fewer than 5. But I'm not clear on what the board's role is in the example that maybe.
Oh, it's just approving. Like the superintendent made a recommendation and then the board approved it. I'm not sure if they changed any of them.
Well, let's keep talking and we can maybe put some different ideas together to make a process we're all comfortable with in the end. Mr. Atherton?
Yeah, I'd like to say that I think the community approach is really good. I think it will help us come to a good decision, especially if we make sure we can get all of the ideas and thoughts. And I agree. I'm not sure giving us 5 names to figure out. I think that would be very hard. But I think if we narrowed it down to where we could have that first discussion on it, and in the process, I want to make sure the schools, I like the idea of separate committees for each school. And that way, we've got a lot of community schools and people feel, strongly about it. And I think having 2 separate committees for this would make sense to help focus on each school and how they want to derive the ideas and conversations and selections. That's my thought.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. I like the first example too. I like that the public could submit nominations and then sort of a committee could narrow this down. I do want to say that I have some level of concern of any board member sitting on that committee. I noticed that is listed in the memo as a possibility, and I sort of feel like none of the 7 of us should probably be on those committees making a recommendation to us. That feels funny to me personally. I would, however, request Dr. Keeling be a part of that process and the consideration. So I guess those are my main takeaways right now. Other board?
Yeah.
Oh.
May I say that in the past, having been a board member for quite some time, and we've had to name a number of buildings, schools. I agree with Dr. Felder that she shouldn't be the one making the decision. I agree that a board member should not be on that committee because ultimately, it's my opinion that the final 3 or 5 names should come before the board. And we would make the decision. That's what we've done. That's what we did with I recall doing it at Cedar Ridge and Pathways and the other schools. So while the committees would do the work, I believe they should submit the final names to us, not Dr. Felder. Dr. Felder, you're off the hook, and that the board should make the final decision. And that's what we've done in the past.
Can I ask a question just about how that's gone, Ms. Stevens?
You want to talk about it now? No, I was just.
No, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I would have thought that like the school level coming with a recommendation and saying, but here are other options would have been, I don't know, less difficult to decide maybe.
Oh,
how'd it go?
It was challenging, and we've got loads of emails. You know how it is when you're making a decision. But I'll have to say Pathways was not that difficult because I'll say it was Peggy Murray who ended up with the winning recommendation, it being Pathways because it's a trading path, and she had, such a logical explanation. It made it easy for the board. Cedar Ridge, not so easy, but anyway, it was. I believe we did it. We got through it. It was a little time consuming, but we got through it.
Mr. Atherton, I know you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say that I agree with you that I don't believe a board member should be involved with this because we should all see the information and not make the group feel like they should lean one way or another. And I would be okay with, 3 names coming to us, but I wouldn't want like 5. I think it would just, it'd be hard to start narrowing it down. But I do like the idea of, it coming to the board members not being involved, and us having that discussion and maybe multiple meetings, like Brenda said. I know we'll get lots of emails on opinions on it, so we'll be helped along, I'm sure.
And we can make sure that we have, let's say that the committee recommended 3 possible names to us. We could then have a public hearing for each location at that point, so the public could weigh in on those 3 finalists before the board made a decision, to just make sure that there's public input all along. I wonder if it would make sense for Eva to sort of take the notes from the board right now and the schools to look at creating committees in each location, and then at the next board meeting, those plans coming back for approval from the board at that point. How do y'all feel about that?
I think it makes a lot of sense.
Ms. Jubison, how do you feel about that? Dr. Felder?
I feel fine about that. Let me unshare my screen here so that I can see you guys properly. The question that I have is whether you want to address, so I know in your policy it speaks of not using the name of a person, and as we are devising the nomination process, the board, you don't necessarily have to decide it tonight, but you would probably need to decide it when you adopt the final plan, whether you want to waive that and allow nominations that even if you don't meet that criteria, so you can give staff some direction. And you may, in the end, select a name that is not someone's name, but if you want people to be able to make that nomination, that probably should be clarified at some point.
Well, I'll just throw in at this point that we've already gotten emails with names suggested, and while I certainly, people's names suggested, I should say, and while I certainly understand the wisdom of not naming it after a person, and I'm not clear on how I would vote or if I would want to waive that policy, I still think that it's probably the most inclusive way to take community nominations and just hear from folks where their heart's at and where the community is right now. So I would certainly be willing to entertain names myself. Other board members have thoughts on any of this?
I think casting a wide net initially makes sense, and then we can make a decision about whether to actually waive the policy later.
Okay, well, it sounds like we have some good, Ms. Hauser?
I have just a question about how will we assure widespread participation? Because we have had trouble that the people who engage are not representative of the community. So what are we going to? How will we deal with that?
Maybe that is also something to have on the agenda when we sort of review the final plan next time, and maybe that is answered by who the stakeholders on these committees are and the way that the school engages with their communities, and certainly we could have a district level strategy for that as well. I don't know if staff is prepared to speak about that at this point, but what do you think, Dr. Felder? Should we put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
I think so. That would be my recommendation. Mm-hmm. Okay. But your point is well taken, Ms. Hauser.
Yeah, it's an important point for sure. Okay, well, if everyone sort of feels good about the feedback, if there's anything else folks want to share with Ms. Dubison as she compiles the plan, then we will bring this back for the official plan back for approval at the next meeting. Ms. Hauser?
I just wanted to add a separate topic, and that's in my conversations around this, F1's Black community has expressed some upset with our board for changing the name of F1 Cheeks Elementary School. And you probably all know that it's the only school in our district that was built as a Black segregated school and a great source of pride for F1's Black community, who actually advocated to keep it open when the district shut down Cedar Grove. They would like us to restore the original name to get rid of F1 Cheeks Global Elementary to and restore it to F1 Cheeks Elementary. I have no idea what it is. It seems like a simple change. I have no idea what it would take to do that. The board took it upon themselves to do it. There was no community engagement. Can we do something? And that to me would go pretty far to rebuild trust with at least F1's Black community.
About the original. So that'll be a conversation.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Ms. Stevens? I couldn't hear you.
I think she said go back to its original name. Did she say that?
Is that what you said, Ms. Hauser?
Yes, that's what I've been asked, is people would like it the name to be restored. Because as you know, a lot of people...
F1 Schools for Negroes.
No, F1 Cheeks Elementary School
is the original.
Well, excuse me, Brenda, I'm sorry. People would like it sent back to F1 Cheeks Elementary, and I think partly because people went there. You know, and so they want to. So this is what I've been asked. I'm sharing it with the board. I've been asked to share it with the board.
I appreciate you sharing that, Ms. Hauser. I do, we have had some feedback that folks want us to stick really tightly to our agendas, and that is not on our agenda tonight. So I would be happy to discuss that with staff, and I'm sure that everyone is willing to engage on that, and we can bring it back to a meeting in the near future. So with that, we will move to our next agenda item, unless there are any other comments about the renaming process before we move on. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we will now move on to Plan B update.
Thank you, Chair McKenzie. Tonight, we have a number of Plan B updates to share with the board. The updates that will be shared tonight are outlined on this slide. We would like to begin with the updates with a short video that will be used to welcome our grades 2 to 12 students opting for in-person learning back. These students, as well as our kindergarten, first grade students, our EC separate setting, and pre-K students who've already come back, but as you know, grades 2 to 12 begin trickling back today using a staggered orientation schedule. We have pulled the video together to welcome all of our students back. This video was produced by Andrea DeGette, an award-winning videography teacher at Cedar Ridge High School. So with that, we want to share this video with all of you. Ms. Bunch?
Can I please get everyone to mute and hold tight while I get the video?
All right. Well, I am sure you saw a lot of familiar faces and could get a glimpse of all, and I do mean all, of the planning and hard work that has been done over many months to prepare for in-person learning in Plan B. The entire Orange County School staff are to be commended for their efforts that have enabled us to open for in-person learning now for all of our students, pre-K to 12, opting for Plan B. So please, please join me in applauding them and welcoming all students opting for Plan B learning back to their schools. And I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that the video is in the process of being translated. We anticipate the translation to be finished by tomorrow, and at that point we will release the videos, both videos, to the public and to our schools. And so thank you. All right. So next, with regards to updates, would be Ms. Dubison, and Ms. Dubison is back to give us the latest update with regards to Senate Bill 37. So Ms. Dubison.
Thank you, and good evening again, board members. I am just going to give you a little update on the legislative process here. We've talked about Senate Bill 37 before. It did pass both houses of the legislature and was presented to the governor on February 17th, which was Wednesday. If the governor takes no action, then it would be effective, or then it would become law after 10 days, which would be the 27th. And the legislation provides that its requirements would then be effective 15 days after that, which would be approximately March 15th, would be the Monday. So that's sort of the fastest I could see it being effective. We don't know if the governor is going to sign it, allow it to become law by inaction or veto it. If he were to veto, it would go back to the legislature to determine if they would override or move forward with some other solution. The governor has made some public comments about things that he was concerned about within the bill, and I suspect that there is some negotiating going on, but obviously we don't know the outcome of that. If Senate Bill 37 becomes law, here are some of the main points. It mandates Plan A or Plan B for grades K through not address pre-K. It does not define what Plan A or Plan B are. For that, you must go to the Strong Schools Toolkit, which is published by North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services in cooperation with DPI. And the bill references the February 2nd version of the toolkit. So it would sort of freeze those requirements in time. Some questions have come up about whether the DHHS could then make changes to the toolkit. And what I can say is, under the terms of Senate Bill 37, if it becomes law, schools are to follow the February 2nd toolkit. The toolkit does not define Plan A or Plan B in terms of a number of days in school or full-time or part-time. It defines them in terms of the level of social distancing. So Plan A contains a number of requirements, of course, the full mask mandate and other requirements meant to encourage 6 feet of distance and maintaining that distance when feasible, but does not mandate that students or adults be at least 6 feet apart when they are stationary. Plan B does contain that mandate, and that's the only difference between the two. All the rest of the requirements are the same. So essentially, under Plan B, your desks are at least 6 feet apart, and you have no more than one child per school bus seat. And that, by its nature, means that for most districts, Plan B means that you may limit the numbers of individuals in a building at any one time and cannot have all of your students in the building at the same time and still maintain those that 6 feet of distance, especially when you're looking at one student per bus seat. Transportation, of course, is something that, you know, aside from the capacity of your classrooms, you also have to look at the capacity of your buses. the toolkit encourages 5 days per week to the extent possible, but again, it's not mandated. It's left to districts to determine the schedule that they need in order to implement all the social distancing requirements that they choose. One thing, and so Orange County Schools already has a Plan B and a timeline for implementing it. One thing that would be different is under Senate Bill 37 requires that Plan A be offered to all students with IEPs or 504 plans in grades K through 12. This is obviously would be a different mandate than what you're operating under now, and it takes a little bit of deciphering because, again, Plan A is not a schedule. It's an amount of social distancing, and the vast majority of your students with IEPs or 504 plans are in regular education classes. They're not in separate classes, so I know that your staff are working on how to implement that mandate, but it's not 100% clear as far as how you would, if the rest of the class is on Plan B. I think essentially the likely outcome would be that some students would be in both cohorts, but what the bill says is that they would be offered Plan A. But obviously you can't, these students are in the same classes, they're not in separate classes. So, but I know that your principals and EC department are looking at their numbers and figuring out how that might change cohorts. If students with IEPs and 504 plans who are in, obviously, regular education classes request Plan A, could require some change of teacher assignments and things like that in order to keep your cohorts at the appropriate number. I was asked about Senate Bill 78, which is another bill that has been filed in the Senate. It is similar to Senate Bill 37 in many respects. Senate Bill 78 was filed but has not gone anywhere. It was referred to committee and remains there and has not been placed on the calendar. My assumption is that it wouldn't be unless and until if there were a veto, potentially it could be placed on the calendar, or the Senate and House could still decide to go with 37 if they had the votes for an override, which is 3/5 in both houses. The difference with Senate Bill 78 is it requires in-person instruction for students with IEPs and 504s, but not specific to Plan B or Plan A, just making sure that those students have in-person instruction or access to in-person instruction according to their plans. And it encourages districts to prioritize daily instruction for self-contained EC classes, as well as students with excessive absenteeism and students who have identified as at risk. So a little bit of a more narrowly tailored solution there as far as those high-risk groups. As I said, that legislation has not gone anywhere, but is sitting in the Senate committee. Are there questions about Senate Bill 37 or the process that we're facing now?
I'm not seeing any. Thank you from, Mr. Atherton. Thank you, Ms. Davison.
Yeah, could you just say a little bit more about the amendment that was added between committees for accommodations for the teachers?
Sure. So what Senate Bill 37 says now as amended is that districts must have a plan to allow staff members to identify as high risk and to consider accommodations for them, which is a requirement that we were already under through the toolkit, and your staff already have that plan in place and have been operating under it for several months. What was added that's different from the toolkit is it says that we must also allow staff to identify as high risk if they are the direct caregiver for a minor who has a high risk condition as identified by the CDC. So that's new. Previously we had been I know that your HR department has been providing, considering and trying to accommodate those requests, as well as those who are personally high risk, but it was not something that was legally required before. So the amendment doesn't mandate a remote work option, and in fact, I think there's a recognition from the way it's worded that, boards are encouraged to enable them to minimize face-to-face contact, to minimize exposure risk, to telework if possible. I think, there's a recognition that if given that the rest of the bill mandates that instruction be provided in person, it's not always going to be possible for, a certain number of staff members to work remotely and still comply with the rest of the law, but it is encouraged where possible.
Thank you.
So sorry. Other board members? I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you, Ms. Stevenson.
Okay, and so for the remainder of our Plan B updates, we have a number of central office and school-based staff who are going to present tonight. And so in order to streamline the process, they will introduce each other, but I will kick off the next updates area, and that would be with Mr. Todd Jones, Chief of IT, and he's going to provide updates with regards to student devices and other technologies. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Good evening, board and all on the call. I wanted to give an update. The big news is that of our 8,000 Lenovo student Chromebooks, the great majority of them have arrived at the schools. They came pre-configured. We've prepped them, which is unboxing them and prepared them for distribution. So they're ready to go. Each school receives a 20% buffer. That's a little bit bigger than the loader pool we had in the last 4 years. And that is 20% buffer beyond enrollment to arrange for swaps. So if the students have any issues, they can just switch out the device and we send that off to repair. The distribution plans have been, we have put a framework together with the DLCs, the media specialists, and IT, and then that has been kind of customized by each school to meet their scheduling needs and to meet their individual requirements. So they are now positioned, and I believe this week they will begin distribution in earnest. The remaining units, which will be about 1,500, are expected to arrive within 2 to 3 weeks. So that will ensure that we have our full complement of devices. The student hardware swap function, which we had been managing from a central location, is now going to revert to schools since we're just about completely out of the old devices for loaners, and the schools have the brand new devices. So if any student is having an issue, we wanted to be able to swap it out for one of the new devices and be able to have that going forward. IT, including we've got some temps that are helping us, are supporting distribution at each school in a variety of roles alongside the media specialists and the DLCs and school personnel. That way we can make sure that we meet our goals of ensuring we're getting all of these devices out to students in a timely manner, making sure we're on top of our inventory obligations, and also making sure that the students can log in so that they've got functioning devices. We did get a number of rental devices. Those are all being collected for return, and the old devices are being collected for auction as we move forward. Next slide, please. Other things we're looking at, student headphones have been ordered. Those will be arriving soon, and the ESL testing headphones are arriving soon. There's some classroom technology that's being evaluated by our digital learning coaches, and IT is supporting that process as well. The teacher headphones and the possibility of getting conference room technology of mics, speakers, and cameras in each classroom to support hybrid instruction. We're also overhauling our Wi-Fi authentication system. We've been relying on a very old system, and we've been in a process of upgrading that over the past few months, which should make the Wi-Fi more reliable and less prone to any outages. But we have to do that very methodically and deliberately to make sure that we don't introduce any disruptions in doing that. And then E-rate planning, we're going to be doing fiber overhauls for all of the schools so that we're putting in faster fiber to make the connections from the various networking closets into the main distribution switches. Lastly, we're doing a Wi-Fi overhaul for 200 East King just to make sure we've got the latest and best equipment there for meetings going forward. And let me see who's next slide, please.
That would be me, Mr. Jones. Thank you so much for that update. We're really excited to hear about our student devices. Good evening, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, Dr. Felder, and board members. We are excited to share with you that thus far we have served over 838,000 meals, and that doesn't include our special meals that we served over the holidays. So I'm sure that would be closer to 900,000 meals. And of course, meal services will continue as we transition to Plan B with just a few changes that we wanted to update you on, as well as our families. Our bagged lunches for our remote learners can now be picked up at all of our schools except New Hope Elementary School and CW Stanford. And they can be picked up between the hours of 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock. And our buses will continue to distribute meals at the usual 17 sites at their 10:30 a.m. time, except our 2 spots at Howe Street and Supper Club stops. Those stops, the buses will be there to provide food starting at 11:15 a.m. And for our families, if you haven't completed a free and reduced lunch application, it is of the utmost importance that you do, because completed forms actually result in additional government funding to support our teaching and learning programs. And also for families and students that qualify, these applications actually provide access to waivers that will help cover some costs. For instance, we have juniors taking ACTs this week, and if you qualify, filling out a form will actually help to waive that testing fee, and that provides the schools and the school district to help waive those fees. So families, please, if you haven't filled out a form, even if you don't eat our school meals, please fill out an application via our lunch application link, and it's www, did I give too many W's? lunchapplication.com, and it can also be found on our district website. And as you can see, as we're planning our transition to Plan B, our buses will be busier than they have been, as they will be transporting around 1,300 students daily again. This is exciting because they've been waiting for the students to be riding the buses. And this is a big deal with many safety measures in place, as we all know. And so here's a few of the updates that we've provided even for our buses for safety. Parents and guardians, we are requesting that you complete an attestation form just the one time for bus riders, and you can have that, you can hand deliver it to your driver upon boarding the bus, and those were provided to you in the bus packets that you received. If you didn't get one, please reach out to your school and we'll make sure we get you one. Also, we're requesting that a parent or an adult accompany the students, even our high school students, at the bus stops in the morning to assure safe practicing of our 3 W's and the social distancing, right, with one of the W's. But also, should one of the students, your child maybe, scream as they're getting on the bus and they're not able to go on the bus, that they can actually return home with you safely. And how will we know that if they're not qualified to continue to proceed to school? Every bus is equipped with a touchless temperature screening device. So as the student is getting on the bus, their temperature will be taken. And our bus drivers have also been provided additional PPE should any of that be required or necessary for the students and the drivers. All of the students, they'll have an assigned seat on a seating chart to ensure that should we need contact tracing, we will know who is sitting where. All of our buses will be disinfected daily, as well as between tiers. because as you know, we share buses, right, for the routes for the tiers. And on Fridays, all of our buses will receive enhanced cleaning, and all of the cleaning is logged in our driver's book so that we can keep track that they are being cleaned appropriately. And we will also be conducting random video footage checks to ensure that our students on the buses are adhering to the 3 Ws. We have just a couple more updates. As we return to school, a number of our schools are piloting an Attestation App that we are working on with the ABC Science Collaborative. This is free to us, so we really appreciate that. This provides our families and staff the opportunity to answer their screening questions prior to leaving home. And once they answer the 5 questions, if they receive a green pass, that means that they're good to go to school or work. But if it shows up red, that means that they should not be leaving home. They should call their doctor and then, of course, immediately call the administrator or supervisor to let us know that you will not be reporting to school or work. This will also, the app will also help expedite the screening process upon arrival at school. And lastly, the air purifiers, we are happy to report that they will actually be arriving this week. We were supposed to be in a little bit sooner, but as we know, we had some major weather issues across our country, which delayed our arrival. But they will be coming this week, and as soon as we get them, we will be getting them to your classrooms as quickly as possible. Now, I would like to pass to Dr. Gammon, our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, for further Plan B updates. Dr. Gammon?
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. Good evening, Chair McKenzie, Vice Chair Stevens, Dr. Felder, and board members. This evening, we are excited to share additional Plan B updates around virtual and hybrid learning. We're so grateful to have a few of our wonderful teachers with us to present this evening. Nicole Lester, a teacher in one of our separate setting classrooms at A.L. Standback Middle School. Sarah Winters, a teacher in one of our Title I pre-K classrooms at Pathways Elementary School. And Rachel Nichols, kindergarten teacher at Cameron Park Elementary School, have been leading the transition to hybrid instruction as part of the initial groups who were approved to return to in-person learning under Plan B earlier this school year. Before they present, I would like to take a couple of minutes to highlight the many efforts our staff has taken over the last several weeks to prepare for the transition to Plan B. Our plan, as you know, in preparing for the transition to Plan B hybrid learning has been to offer ongoing support on multiple fronts. During the initial phase of planning, teachers were introduced to the concept of hybrid learning through research articles, videos, professional development sessions from our curriculum and instruction team, as well as digital learning coaches and educators from across the country who already have experienced teaching in this manner. From there, Orange County Schools sought out other school districts in North Carolina who were actively working in Plan B to communicate with teachers, administrators, and support staff about the successes and challenges that they had faced with hybrid as well as virtual learning. These virtual visits were critically important as we were able to see from our peers across the state that while extremely challenging, this can certainly be done. As we shifted to the next phase, our teachers began applying their learning. Teacher leaders from across schools volunteered to engage in mock classrooms where adults were able to come into the buildings and serve as in-person students while Orange County Schools students continued to learn remotely. These practice sessions proved invaluable. Mock classrooms gave us a first-hand glimpse at the pros and cons of hybrid learning, the need for additional technology to ensure the best possible learning experience for teachers and students, as well as what an appropriate classroom structure and setup should look like. While mock classrooms and virtual visits were ongoing, Orange County Schools made a concerted effort to create a feedback loop with teachers across all grade levels in the form of teacher focus groups as we worked together to plan and to problem solve. Throughout this period of planning, our curriculum instruction team, with the support of digital learning coaches, administrators, and teachers, worked behind the scenes to create a robust professional development hub that we're extremely proud of. The PD Hub is accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It offers a variety of PD options through videos, modules, and recorded professional development sessions and more. While we are sincerely proud of our entire district's effort to prepare for this constantly evolving nature of our learning environment, we are mindful that there will continue to be opportunities to learn and grow as we progress in the coming days and weeks. At this time, I am honored to turn our presentation over to Ms. Nicole Lester as she takes us through her journey.
Here I am. Hi guys, good evening. Thank you for inviting me to speak. Again, I am Nicole Lester. This is my 16th year of teaching. I believe it is my 10th in Orange County Schools. And most days I feel like a first year teacher because I have never taught hybrid before and neither has anybody else. So that's what we are going to talk to you guys a little bit about, some of my experiences since October. The picture there is me and Mr. Davis, my co-teacher. Between the two of us and our 4 TAs, we serve about 20 students with multiple and complex special needs. I believe right now we have 9 in person and 11 remote, and we have been doing this hybrid since the end of October. Before I get into that, I would like to really just thank the board and the superintendent. You guys have had the hardest decisions to make this year, and everybody has an opinion. And I know you have been flooded with emails and phone calls and social media blasting, so thank you guys for all that you have done. I know it is a tough year for everyone. So I do want to start by saying the stress and anxiety that you experienced before coming back hybrid is like nothing I've ever experienced before. You run through a lot of those what-if scenarios. I will say I really worked closely with EC leadership and my building admin, closer than I ever have before, to work through those fears. I had question after question after question, and if they didn't know the answer, they found out the answer, and we problem solved together, and that was really, really huge in helping ease some of those anxieties. Again, the first few days were extremely difficult. The first day I came back, I was like, oh my goodness, this is awful. I can't do it. This is terrible. And by the second day, it was already improving. And by the end of the first week, I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. This really isn't that bad. But that first day, it's just so many moving pieces, and you've been so stressed out about it that it just really is an overwhelming thing. Seeing your students, though, for me, I keep my students with me all day, every day for 3 to 5 years, depending on the student. So I already knew most of them. So for me, seeing their faces again was just absolutely amazing. And for a lot of teachers, especially the upper grades, they haven't laid eyes on these students at all. So getting to actually see those people that you've been working with for so many months is really, really just the greatest experience, the greatest part of this whole new normal. Some days are harder than others. You really do need to give yourself grace, especially the veteran teachers. It's incredibly difficult to feel like a beginning teacher all over again and to be like, oh, last year I was, nominated for this award and I presented at this conference and I did all these great things. And this year you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And so really, to give yourself grace, we talk to all the kids about social emotional health, and we really do need to take some time and give ourselves that same, like, this is unprecedented, this is crazy, you're stressed out, it's okay. Keeping your students happy and healthy this year is of the utmost importance. Their test scores don't matter the way they usually do. They're all these things, like happy and healthy is what I just keep telling myself. It's my goal for myself, my family, my students. That's really where we need, where our goal needs to be. I am lucky that I have teacher assistants. I could not do any part of my job without my wonderful teacher assistants. I know some of the younger grades have them. It really helps being able to delegate tasks to them. Okay, I'm going to, work on this piece with the virtual only students. You can work on this piece with the in-person students, really being able to delegate, or even if it's a day where like, oh no, my computer just died and I don't know why, I need to borrow yours. Just having another adult in the room. And my assistants are, as I always say, the best on the planet. So, and also the air purifiers and all of the different PPE and things that you guys have done. You can see in one of the pictures there, I have some PVC borders with clear plexiglass in them. And those things have really helped ease my anxiety. Today, some of you may know that a tree fell right outside of our school, and power went out, internet went out. It was ridiculous. But my first thought, I wasn't worried about anything else. I was like, oh no, the air purifier turned off. So just having that really does make you feel a lot better. It is going to be difficult. Coming back is not easy, but it's a lot smoother than what your anxiety is telling you it's going to be. So that's my big takeaway is it's not going to be perfect. You're not going to feel super confident doing it, but it is doable. It is rewarding. Most of us went into education because we love children and we want to see them grow, and that part, that is still the heart of it. It looks different. It's weird to not be able to, get physically close to your students, but it is still wonderful at the end of the day. And I didn't think I would say that in October. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lester. Now we're going to turn it over to Ms. Sarah Winters, Title I Pre-K teacher at Pathways Elementary School.
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening on behalf of our entire pre-K team in Orange County Schools. Again, we were one of the first groups, along with our separate settings, to return to the classroom in October. And I will tell you that we were anxious. We were anxious about our possible exposure to COVID and about all the changes we had to make to the classroom. Through collaboration, we did it. We removed lots of furniture, our rugs, our soft materials, all the things that make us pre-K. We removed many toys. We created separate bins of toys and materials for our children to play with. We had to place tape and dots on the floor to hopefully keep our children 6 feet apart. And we received lots of information about sanitation and cleaning protocols, and we adopted all of that. And so we opened again with some anxiety, and we continue to make changes to meet the needs of our children. So what is going well? One thing is our children do wash their hands. One of our pre-K teachers wrote a hand washing song that lasts 20 minutes. With many of our children, we do have to sing the song with them, but for others, they're already starting to sing the song themselves. And they know wash hands when they enter the classroom and many times during the day. We do not use much of the hand sanitizer because our children are young. Another good thing, and something was unexpected, our pre-K children wear masks. Not perfectly. We have to remind them many times during the day to pull their mask up over their noses. But for 4 and 5-year-old children, they are wearing their masks. Most of them can put them on and take them off. Another awesome thing has been collaboration. The increased time to collaborate between just our individual teaching teams, our teacher and teaching assistants. We are now able to have weekly pre-K PLCs with our teacher, and we have a monthly pre-K PLC with our entire team, including our teachers, TAs, our facilitators, and our administrator. We have learned so much from each other, and there is no way that one of us could have done this without the help of the entire team. We are blessed that we do have one teacher who teaches virtually. She prepares a slide deck for each day of the week. And if one of our children is absent, we are able to send that slide deck home so they can keep up with the rest of the class. Another benefit to all of this is our technology skills have increased. Even with older teachers, we've been able to learn many new things that at least I never thought possible. We have learned that our children are still children. They love school, they love their friends, they love their teachers, and we may not be able to see those smiles under their mask, but we know they're smiling when we see their eyes. The challenges, and there have been some, is social distancing. They wash their hands, they wear their mask, but it is hard to keep 4- and 5-year-old children 6 feet apart. We can do it when they're in large groups, when they're sitting on their on their mats or in chairs. We have dots on the floor that keep them 6 feet apart. However, when they're playing together, especially outside, they are close together. They really, at this age, they are learning all those social skills. So it is just not developmentally appropriate for our children to be 6 feet apart, but we try. And it's hard for teachers to stay 6 feet apart. With young children, we still have to help them put their jackets on, zip their jackets. Some of our children are not toilet trained, so we're working with them in the bathroom. We have to help them learn to hold scissors, learn to hold crayons and pencils. We have to help them tie their shoes. There are numerous things that we have to be close to them. Families can't visit the classroom. A big part of our program is that relationship between families. And in the past, families have been able to see the classroom their children are learning in. We did have an increase in our anxiety level after the winter break. As the numbers went up, our anxiety went up. I think as the numbers are coming down, I feel safer. And I'm thinking everybody else does also. And again, some of us, most of our pre-K teachers are, even though we have a virtual classroom, we have 1 or 2 children that we are teaching virtually as well as we're teaching the children in the classroom. So all in all, even though it's been scary at times, it's been a good experience. Our children learn much better when they're in the classroom. And I appreciate the support of the district with the air purifiers and all the extra PPE that we've been given. Thank you so much, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you and Ms. Lester so much for being here and sharing your experiences with us. I know it's helpful to all of us on the board to hear those experiences.
And so next we have Ms. Rachel Nichols, a kindergarten teacher from Cameron Park Elementary School, to share about her experience.
Hi, I am Rachel Nichols, and I appreciate you having me tonight. I just wanted to share a little bit about our successful return with kindergartners. This is my 17th year teaching kindergarten at Cameron Park, and I'm going to just share a few of the highlights of in-person learning now that we're back. So the students have been fantastic at following all of our new rules. Our orientation days are spent practicing these new rules, routines, and procedures. And I think the kids really understand that these things are necessary and important to keep everyone safe and healthy, and they really want to be back. So at this point, I feel like they're willing to do just about anything they need to do to be back in person. We have been very creative about how and where we are delivering instruction. We're spending time outside learning when we can and finding creative ways to incorporate movement in a classroom, like dancing, stretching, rhythm activities, and even standing on things to practice balance. The students have enjoyed eating outside at our new picnic tables, and it's been a great break from the classroom and another chance to get outside. All the students that are coming back, but especially the young ones, need to be able to move, socialize, and learn through hands-on, inquiry-based learning experiences. The new rules and procedures have made this a little tricky, but we're figuring out lots of creative and fun ways to work within these parameters. The difference that just a few few weeks of in-person instruction has made for my students has been very dramatic. Face-to-face reading instruction has allowed students to truly put into practice all these learning virtually, and some students have run multiple levels in just this short amount of time. Learning is fun and helpful. It's such an important year for gaining confidence in all academic areas and feeling proud of their hard work. My number one priority for each of my students, whether hybrid or fully virtual, is to feel that fun and magic during this unusual school year and love learning. Of course, returning in person has a share of challenges as well as opportunities to find creative solutions. Initially, meeting the needs of in-person, remote, and fully virtual students at the same time felt like the biggest challenge. After collaborating with our school administration, we were able to utilize an instructional assistant to help support remote and virtual students during the day, in addition to our current Zoom time. This has helped our kindergarten team feel like we are striking a better balance in meeting the needs of all students in a way that doesn't feel as overwhelming. Continuing a strong sense of classroom community, now that we're not all together on Zoom as often, was also a challenge. Prioritizing relationships and connections is so important. Thankfully, students still have specials together virtually each day. We can plan special Zoom times to catch up, and we also have common class goals that we're working toward, which make us feel like a team. The third challenge that we found initially was the inability to have centers and shared materials. By giving students an individual center bucket containing things like Play-Doh, puzzles, Legos, activity books, they have some fun things to do from 9 to 9:30 as students arrive. My students also have a large Rubbermaid tub that contain all the manipulatives and materials they'll need for learning throughout the day. And each student have a bucket that they use to carry learning materials outside, and they can be flipped upside down and used as a stool. The support, collaboration, grace, and encouragement our staff has been shown from our school administration and our student families has been instrumental in the success of our transition back to in-person learning. The students have been so joyful about returning and happily roll with the changes, comply with the rules, and have been our biggest cheerleaders. Our students who have remained virtual have been flexible during this transition to in-person learning and know that they're supported and loved. All of our students are our reason. The reason teachers have learned a million new ways to deliver instruction, navigate technology challenges, plan yard visits just to see our students face to face, sleep much less than any of us should, and have become a part of our students' families this year. It's not the year we would have wished for, but we have certainly made and continue to make it the very best that it could possibly be. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our teachers for joining us this evening. Now we're going to transition to our Director of Human Resources, Ms. Teresa Cunningham-Brown, and she's going to share an update around staffing.
Thank you, Dr. Gammon. Again, I'd like to say thank you to Ms. Lester, Ms. Winters, and Ms. Nichols for sharing their reflections. It was really awesome to hear. Board members, community, I'd like to share some brief updates with regards to staffing across the district. We have one elementary classroom position. It remained the same as a previous board update. With regards to our non-classroom positions, I know that we've all been anticipating the recommendation for AIG position. We feel really confident that we're close and we will have a recommendation to bring to the board in the coming days. With regards to our middle school openings, it increased by one position. We added an additional ELA resignation to the board report this evening, and we are diligently working with our principals with regards to filling the middle school openings. With regards to high school, we did add one math position. I'm working with Dr. Ramirez to recruit a math teacher or two, and so we feel confident that we will have a recommendation to bring to you in the coming days. I wanted to just share with the board and the community places that we post positions. We have local places that we post as well as national places that we post. We post in Ed Week, Ed Weekly. We post in Teacher Jobs, LinkedIn, Indeed, HBCU Careers, NC CASA, North Carolina Living Wage. We post some of our specialized positions in the Council for Exceptional Children and the National Association for Gifted Children. So depending on the scope of the position, we try to get as much exposure out there, not only in North Carolina, but across the country. And I'll pause to see if there are any questions with regards to our staffing vacancies at this moment.
Mr. Atherton, and then Ms. Doyle, and then Ms. Smiley.
Ms. Cunningham-Brown, I had a question about a program I have not heard of the district having, but I have been approached by several people about it. Are we looking at troops to teachers or any programs that allow our armed forces that are coming out of, that kind of career, looking for teaching? And I looked it up, and it is called Troops to Teachers, but do we have any programs such as that?
We participate and work with our Troops to Teachers representative at the Department of Public Instruction. We have not hired a Troops to Teacher, but I am very familiar with the program and work very collaboratively with the DPI and other military staff around this program. Okay,
and the other question I had is, I know we still have a lot of ECs, non-classrooms. Has there been any movement of getting more, resumes of people, looking at those positions?
Yes, I am working collaboratively with Connie Crimmins with regards to the EC positions. We have folks that have committed and some that have committed for next year. So we feel like we're in a good position with regards to the EC positions. We're getting our, working with some of the local universities like Barton and High Point, who have awesome EC programs to make sure that their student teachers and some of their other graduates are looking at our school district for opportunities.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Ms. Doyle?
I'm wondering, Ms. Cunningham-Brown, about the vacancies we have in the language arts. Here there are 4 ELA vacancies at the middle school level, and I know at least one of our middle schools has also had turnover in French teachers a couple times in the past couple of years. And so I'm just wondering, is there something particularly challenging about this teaching at this level in language arts, where maybe we need is there some way we can provide support to our ELA teachers that we haven't tried already to kind of build up that support, that it's easier for them to stay?
And as I mentioned, the ELA, the most recent ELA vacancies appeared on the board report tonight, so I am in ongoing communication with each of the principals regarding their ELA needs. And the previous presentation, I think, happened about a week or two before this evening's resignation. So we are working with those principals to aggressively recruit for the ELA positions. No, I can't say that there's a specific reason why we have those 2 ELA positions. They're due to vacancies. They're not a retirement, and they're due to one was based on the person moving to another LEA, and other reasons for their resignations.
Thank you.
Ms. Smiley?
My question was just about the ELA position. So this hasn't been, I don't remember this being sort of a long-standing pattern of challenge filling middle school ELA. It may be a fluke of the moment that happens to be where they're all landing right now.
Yes, and I believe some of them may be a result of the COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in and decisions that staff members are making.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm not seeing any.
Hillary.
Yep. Mr. Atherton?
So can we ask questions about other stuff that was presented? Is that okay?
I don't see why not.
Okay, I had sent an email to, I guess, Dr. Felder and others about, there was concerns about some of our new hand sanitizers that would have a strange smell. Have you looked at that, and are there options to promote hand sanitizing, or is this just the way it's going to be? I'm just curious if you've learned anything on that.
Thank you, Mr. Atherton. We did receive your email and we were looking into it.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Dr. Dawson, as she's been working with the operations team on that issue.
Mr. Atherton, I believe the hand sanitizer that does have an unpleasant scent, I believe those were the bottles that we purchased from Walgreens. So we are, I'm sorry, Walmart. So we are looking into making sure that that's what the situation is, in which case there is only a minimal number of those bottles that were purchased. So we're looking into making sure that all of the other hand sanitizers not causing that odor. So we will provide an update in the board weekly update.
Okay. Just for clarity, the ones that I saw were the brand new ones that were mounted to the wall and you would press under it. So it's not the temporary bottles. It was the actual new hand sanitation stations that we attached to the wall. Anyway, I'll be looking forward to that update. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Atherton, if I may, I know that there was a bad batch from the Bud Group from those dispensers, and they have agreed to replace those for free.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. Ms. Hauser?
So I understand that some of our hybrid classes are using TAs that are remote. And I wondered how that is working, and if those TAs are going to be back after vaccinations. But I wonder how prevalent that is, and how, is a remote TA for a hybrid class really a TA? Just curious how that's all working.
So thank you for that question, Ms. Hauser. I do know that that's something that we can certainly look into. As you heard earlier from the teachers that presented, we do have different kind of scenarios at each school where they're making decisions that fit, the logistics of their school at their particular grade level. There's not always going to be a uniform standard way at every school because we're having to use staffing in the best way that we possibly can. I've not been made aware of specific situations where that they are being the TA from a remote location, but that's absolutely something that we can check on and find out how that's going if that is the case, and if that's something that we can, help to assist with. We'd be happy to do that.
Ms. Smiley?
Just going all the way back to the technology piece, I'm so glad that I got an email about picking up one of the laptops. It's very, very exciting to see that finally happening. The conference technology piece that the DLCs are looking into, I think just making sure that we test that with like realistic scenarios is so important because my experience of a large group in a room and then other people remote, it does make it I haven't seen that work super, super well. So I just hope we're really, really testing out and making sure that it's worth whatever the cost is.
So, yes, Mr. Jones, if you don't mind me taking this one, Mr. Jones, because Ms. Rath and I actually met with the vendor, spoke with them, and then we also had a team of our DLCs and our IT team meet with the vendor to present to us this model. And then we actually have a DLC and a teacher at a school piloting one of the devices. And so we will be having feedback from those teachers and the DLC that's actually will be using the technology. So Mr. Jones, if you wanted to talk to them a little bit more about the technology, I just wanted to give them an update that we are vetting this and having this tried, in a classroom before we make any decisions.
Yes, Ms. Smiley, I think your point is well taken, and we want to make sure we're vetting this, not just for the performance of the system, but the reliability of it and, what it will require the teacher. Sometimes they'll have to switch audio settings, and that may be easy to do when you've got a couple minutes to do that outside of class, but some of those transition issues are going to be really important. So we really do need to look at that in as close a simulation of a real classroom as we can.
Great. Yeah, and I think using real classrooms, sounds like the best way to do that. And I would also just suggest that, I don't know what age group the students are that are participating in that, but I would ask for their feedback as well, because that remote experience is going to be hard for the teacher to judge, but the people who are on the receiving end of that will maybe have some feedback about that as well.
Any other questions? Mr. Atherton?
So just a couple questions on the technology. So Mr. Jones, on the fiber update, is that within the building or to the building?
That is within the building. That's all the runs from the networking closets into the aggregation point. The fiber that we use between buildings is, for the most part, it is leased through the E-rate program, and it's provided by Spectrum.
All right, because I saw the E-rate planning is why I was asking, because it sounded like you were in building versus out of building, but you're really talking about the in building, to the IDS, MDS kind of thing?
Correct. Right now, I think we've got some old fiber that maybe is maxed out at a gig, so we're getting some new multi-mode fiber that'll have a much higher range and should last us for many years.
Yeah, 20-year range normally on fiber. The Wi-Fi authentication, could you just say what you're going from to?
Well, we had an older radius system that the support was really eroding on that, and so now we're converting over into a radius as a service solution, which is we've adopted it in our shop. It's already a whole lot faster than the old system, and the old system was, we had a Wi-Fi outage, I think a week or two ago. We were able to get it up and running again, but that was the old radius system that was failing. So again, we want to be very deliberate about that and methodical in converting over to the new radius service that we'll be using going forward. It just didn't make sense for us to be hosting our own service, and the old service was getting very problematic and hard to get support from.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's any of the as a service that we can leverage without trying to build it ourselves and maintain it. There's no value in it, so I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Sure.
Smiley?
This is not a question. I just, since we're at the break of a big block of these, I just wanted to share a feedback reaction, which is just like my level of awe at the amount of work happening everywhere in this district. There's so much of it. Everyone has been burning the candle at both ends for almost a year now. and I know it's all for our students, and just how incredibly grateful I am to all of you, the folks on this call and everyone else in our schools who's working so hard. It's the number of things that have had to be just totally reinvented and problems to solve, and it's just really incredible. I'm just really in awe.
Well, I certainly echo those sentiments as well. Thank you for saying that, Ms. Smiley. Well, I think that is this the end, Dr. Felder, of this presentation?
Oh, it is not.
Okay.
There's a little bit more to go, but I just have to say, Mrs. Smiley, I appreciate your comments, but know that none of this would be possible without the board's support. So appreciate the support from the board in getting this important work done. So thank you. So there's more to come, not much more. We're getting there. And so next Plan B update is around vaccine sign-up. And so we are fortunate to have a partnership with Hillsborough Pharmacy, and Ms. Cobb, Sharita Cobb, will come forward to provide that update. And then we're going to punt to Rhonda Rath, our CFO. She's going to share some budget items related to Plan B and ask the board to take action on those items. And then we're going to wrap up with an update with regards to the strategic plan, because that work is underway as well. And so we want to, we have two guests joining us to provide an overview of the process and the timeline for moving this important, very important work forward. So with that, Ms. Cobb.
Good evening, board members. Tonight, I just want to give a quick update about our wonderful partnership with Hillsborough Pharmacy, and as far as the vaccination is concerned. So after speaking with the owner and operator of Hillsborough Pharmacy, she will be receiving approximately 100 shots or vaccinations this week. And so what she'd like to do is, because of our partnership with them and our history of them doing other vaccinations for our staff, they would like to be able to provide those vaccinations to our current staff. So what has happened is, after much deliberation, we decided that it was in our best interest to do a lottery, because we all are a team, and we feel that we are all equal, and we want to support everyone that is working with and trying to bring our students back in a safe and healthy environment. So once the lottery closes, which would be tomorrow at 12, the names will be put in a lottery random picking system, and then numbers will be provided for each of the individual names that have signed up. That information will be provided to Hillsborough Pharmacy, and then the staff will be provided with a sign-up list, which would literally be an appointment. Once that is complete, they will complete a CVMS, which is the state management system where you will sign in, and that is where they will keep track of each individual person's vaccination. We will not keep any of that information or any of those kinds of things. That will be managed at the state level. And we are just excited about this opportunity that Hillsborough Pharmacy has provided for us. Are there questions?
Mr. Atherton?
Not a question, but just a statement. That is fantastic. I know a lot of teachers are looking for vaccinations and having to leave to do that. It is just wonderful that our community, has a partnership with someone so caring to put our teachers in the front of the line, especially given they're back in the classroom. So thank you for that update.
Other board members? Well, I just want to also mention that we are going to continue to look for partnership opportunities with any provider that we can to increase our opportunities for our staff.
Yes, Ms. McKenzie, I will say that we are in the process of setting up another partnership with UNC System as well as Orange County Health Department. That will not be in a lottery. That will be more a prioritized list, and we are working to get that list and survey together now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cobb.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, board members, community, staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight in regard to some items that we have identified as needs as we are processing and beginning to transition more into our Plan B opening. As another layer of support for our schools, we would like to ask the board this evening to approve an additional teacher assistant for Orange High School and Cedar Ridge High School, and then a teacher assistant for each of our middle schools and our elementary schools. This will require a fund balance appropriation. These individuals would be temporary through June the 21st, and that we will be looking and discussing the possibility of also carrying this into our next budget year. This will be additional school-level support to support our teachers and to substitute as the needs arise. These individuals will be at the schools each day, and if there's not a need for a substitute, they will be extra support to monitor the compliance with our 3 Ws. And in other cases, they may be extra support for attestations if needed. Also, to supervise during our lunch and bathroom breaks throughout the day, to just add an extra layer of support at our schools. Is there any questions before I move on to the next item?
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you, Ms. Rath. I just want to make sure I understand. So that would be one for Cedar Ridge, one for Orange, one that would float in middle schools as needed, and one for elementary schools?
That would be one. No, ma'am, I'm sorry. It would be one for each middle school and then one for each elementary school. Each school would have a TA with the exception of Partnership Academy.
Okay, and I'm just wondering because of is it because are certain COVID dollars or something covering some of those? I'm just wondering why we only need $128,000 from the fund balance for the middle and elementary. Like, where's the funding coming for the one group versus the other group?
Both of them are coming. Both of the requests would be coming from fund balance, Ms. Doyle. There are no COVID dollars at this time that we would allot for this. The COVID dollars that have been released to the district are what we are looking to utilize for our summer learning and remediation plans.
I think if I could restate maybe the question, because I have it too. So 2 TAs for the high schools would cost $52,000, but 10 for middle and elementary would cost $128,000.
Is it an error calculation? I apologize. That should.
Ms. Rath, could it possibly be? I want to say because of the size of the 2 high schools. Is it because we were saying 2 TAs at each high school because of the size, and then it was 1 at each of the middle and elementary?
I was under the impression that it was a TA for each school. A TA's salary is roughly around $26,000. And for our middle schools, and it's just a rounding error for those middle and elementary schools.
So that would be more like $260,000?
No, ma'am. Let me back up. I'm sorry. I just made it's not $26,000 annually. When we look at the time frame of March through June, we are looking for that time period needing roughly $26,000 for each of these positions to cover their salary, their supplement, and their benefits. So for Cedar Ridge and Orange High School, that would be the $52,000 is representative of 2 TAs, one for each of those high schools, and then for it should be $126,000 for your middle and elementary schools.
But is that 10 schools at $26,000?
That's a great question, Ms. McKenzie. I am sorry. I am muddling this up tremendously this evening.
That's okay.
It's Monday.
No, we spoke about this in the budget committee meeting. Now I can just go back and pull out the presentation.
Give me just a minute. I'm working through these calculations.
I think we just didn't catch this and discuss it at budget.
I think you're spot on. When I look at a teacher assistant,
Ms. Reth, I think Dr. Dawson's point was right, that it's 2 in each of the large high schools. That makes sense.
That is what we talked about, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what it was in the budget presentation.
Yeah, and that math would work.
Mm-hmm.
yes. So the bullet is incorrect. It would be 2 for Cedar Ridge, 2 for Orange High School, which would be $52,000, and then 1 each for your middle and elementary schools.
Yeah, which is 16,000.
It'd be 13,000. Yes.
All right. Ms. Hauser, are you?
Yeah, I have a quick, just a simple question, and that's there's a wide disparity in the number of students in our middle and elementary schools. And I just wonder if any of the schools might need a second TA. So don't have to answer that, but I just want to open that door if that's needed.
And we appreciate that, Ms. Hauser, and we come into this also with the understanding that if the need arises, that we would address this with the board and bring it back to the board to maybe consider adding additional support.
Thank you, Ms. Rath. Is there other budget items you would like for us to review, or are you there?
Yes, thank you, Ms. McKenzie. We just wanted to let the board know that we are intending to put out a bid for our picnic tables. Hopefully the intent is for that bid to be posted tomorrow. Due to the dollar amount for all of the picnic tables that would be needed at each of our schools, that falls up under the bidding thresholds where we would actually need to have a bid request for that. So that is going out tomorrow with the hopes of opening those bids on March the 2nd for the picnic tables at our schools.
Ms. Rath?
Yes.
May I ask you if all of the schools need picnic tables? I just know some schools had already purchased some through their PTAs, and I just wonder if this is an order for every single school, or are we going to reimburse some schools that have already purchased their own? I'm just curious where we are.
Yes, ma'am. We this bid is based upon a request of each of our school level principals, letting us know what they needed at each school. For those who did already purchase those picnic tables earlier in the year, we are working to make sure that those funds are reimbursed to them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Ms. Bunch, if you could move to the next slide if there's not any further. One other item that we wanted to ask for approval for this evening, at our last board meeting, we had brought to you a request to purchase iPads for our pre-K and kindergarten to do an iPad refresh. The board did approve a fund balance appropriation at that time for $315,000 to refresh those iPads. What has come to our attention since that time is that Apple is willing to offer us a lease that is a no-interest lease with a $1 buyback option, where we would only have to pay out $78,000 over the next 4 years with no interest. We would like to recommend to the board considering a lease agreement versus a straight-out buy to ensure that the district gets on a schedule for a timely refresh. And with the buyback option, should we not choose to buy the devices back and refresh them, Apple has partners who will buy the devices from the district at good premium rates, which will give us equity for our next device refresh in 4 years.
Mr. Atherton?
It sounds like a fantastic idea. The question I have is, what is their policy on the warranty? I know all of our iPads are normally in the big red, probably can run over with a truck, but, are there anything, do they still warranty it with any type of damage or things like that, or we have to buy it out at that point?
I can speak to that, Ms. Raff. I don't know how it works with the lease program, but I know we can get Apple Care Plus. It's similar in forgiveness to what we have for all the other student devices, although it does limit to 2 repairs within a calendar year.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Well, Rhonda, do you have any additional budget items?
No, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Stevens, for giving me that opportunity. I was going to now say that those are the items that I had for presentation for the board to consider this evening.
Ms. Stevens, would you mind throwing an extra 20 minutes on the meeting with your motion? I know that's your favorite thing to do, but...
Right. I can't believe you asked me to do that. But
you love me, so you'll do it.
All right. Yes. Well, I move that we extend until, what did you say, 9:15? Is that what you said?
I said 9:20, but I'll take whatever you'll give me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. All right. 9:20, if that's what you want. And also, I'd like to approve the lease agreement for the pre-K and K iPad refresh and the TA position.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Stevens and a second from Ms. Smiley. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle? Yes. Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Our budget items have been approved, and we are in session until 9:20. We will move to our next item, which is the strategic plan. And thank you, Ms. Raff.
Okay.
Okay, well, this brings us to our last, but certainly not least item for tonight. So when I came to Orange County Schools in 2019, I promised the district that I would work to enhance excellence, equity, and access for all Orange County students. Now we're taking another exciting step to achieve that goal by developing a new 5-year strategic plan. Our strategic plan will be our North Star and our roadmap. It will articulate Orange County Schools' goal, mission, vision, belief statements, strategies for how we'll achieve our objectives and how we'll measure our progress. I'm a big believer in not just setting goals, but tracking our success with important metrics. Through the strategic plan, we'll keep our team accountable as we strive toward greatness for our students. Our goal is for this plan to represent everyone in the community. We've already begun engaging our families and staff and students to get their input throughout the process. To that end, we will have, while we have the hopes and dreams of families shared at last year's Listen and Learn, staff, families, students, and members of the community can begin, and some have already, I'm happy to say, providing input on the next mission, vision, and belief statements by sharing words and phrases that represent their hopes and dreams for our students through a portal on the district's website. So at this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Leanne Winter, Executive Director, and Ms. Nancy Black, Staff Attorney with the North Carolina School Boards Association. Both Ms. Winter and Ms. Black are facilitating the district's strategic planning process. Tonight, they will walk you through the process and timeline and answer any questions you may have. They will return on March 8th to share the draft mission, vision, and belief statements for the board's review and feedback. So at this time, I'm yielding to Ms. Winter and Ms. Black. Welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, board members. Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thanks for being here.
Oh, we're so happy to be here. I think Leanne is here, or is she?
I see her in the attendee list. Could we promote her?
She's my fearless leader, and she was going to start.
Mr. Jones, are you able to promote Ms. Winter, please?
She's now a panelist.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
There you are.
Welcome.
Good evening. I am so sorry about that. I actually had gone in through your meeting site originally to just kind of check and see where you all were time-wise, and then I left and went through my link, and obviously it still kept me the way I was. So again, I'm Leanne Winter. I am the Executive Director of the North Carolina School Boards Association. Nancy and I are thrilled to be able to work with you on this project over the next few months. Our original plan was to actually have started last summer, but given everything COVID, things got delayed quite a bit. Luckily, you all had done the Listen and Learn sessions that took place when Dr. Felder first came, and those have been extremely helpful to getting us started on this process. And we are using that information both at this stage and at the next stage. I'm going to turn it over to Nancy to walk you through what we've been through so far, and then I will pick up with what the rest of the schedule and process will look like.
Sounds good. Thank you, board members, for having us here. It's a nice time to look towards the future and what we can expect going forward, coming out of all that we've been through. And Leanne and I have both been excited to start this project with Dr. Felder and her senior administrators. We have been had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Felder, her cabinet, and senior staff on 2 occasions. We spent a couple hours each time with a great turnout. I counted like maybe 23 or more people at one of the meetings. And so they have given great attention to crafting language
that reflects what they believe to be important for Orange County schools, these staff members, and to create what they want to create for children that are educated here. Everyone participating had access to the input you all had received thus far from the community and staff. And Dr. Felder had sent out feedback from last year's Listen and Learn, which they mentioned earlier. Our initial goal for the meetings was to create the mission and vision statements from the perspective of these staff members. And if we had time, we wanted to go ahead and get started talking about belief statements. Prior to the meetings, we gave the group a compilation of mission and vision statements, which included your current ones, those that belong to the State Board of Education that they have created, and a sampling of ones from all across the state, so they would have an idea what something like this might look like. So we asked them to think through how they would want to, what they would want to create, and we explained that a mission statement defines the purpose of the school district, and the vision statement, the future aspirations of the school district. And that ideally these would be 1 to 2, absolutely no more than 2 sentences in length. We also gave them a sampling of belief statements for the second meeting. So in the first session, we worked on words and phrases for the mission and vision statements, and we asked them specifically what words and phrases they would like to use. And then the second session, we worked together to fine-tune that language and began discussing beliefs. And I feel like, Leanne and I both feel like we had a lot of fruitful discussion and opportunity for input from these administrators. So we do have a draft of the beliefs and the mission and vision that is beginning to reflect what we think your senior staff at least would like to put forth. We heard a lot about growing and learning and serving and leading, engaging families, empowering students through excellence, equity, and access, encouraging students to grow and learn, to enable students to choose the best path forward for them, whatever that may be and whatever that is for that individual child. We heard a lot about trust and inclusiveness and about opportunities, providing an environment where every student is able to grow, thrive, and embrace learning. It was important to these folks we were talking with that we recognize, that y'all recognize and accept each student where they are with empathy, ensuring that they're engaged academically, socially, and culturally, and that they become lifelong learners. We heard about restorative practices and healing the community, staff, and students, and showing grace to each other. We also discussed how they would become productive, how students would become productive members of society in a way that is meaningful to that particular child, meeting that child where they are, and about providing a caring environment where people are celebrated. We heard about the importance, how important it is to involve parents or the appropriate family member in what you are doing at Orange County Schools. And they want family members to be able to see their child in these statements, no matter who they are. So that's just a little bit of what we heard in listening. We do have a draft, and I don't know if, Leanne, you want me to try and push it forward. I think the important thing is this is not the final draft, and we are going to bring another more final draft back to you on March 8th. So, and going forward, we'll be asking for your input as well. So what's your pleasure?
We're going to do that at the next meeting.
Okay, sounds great. Hope I didn't take too long, but it was just exciting and inspiring to be with your staff and hear from them in this way. So I wanted to share it. Thank you.
So what we will be doing next is continuing to refine the draft as the community continues to provide feedback through the portal. We will then bring that final draft to you on March 8th. It will stay in draft form still for quite a while, but it's important that we get the Board of Education's feedback before we move on to our next step of drafting the goals for the school district. As you will see at the bottom, we will work in March to come up with 3 to 5 goals, with 4 goals being kind of our target number. We will then bring those draft goals back to you, again, with the mission, vision, and beliefs in early April. And then from that point on, I would say the really tough work starts to happen at that point. We will set up committees by goal. There will be a chair for each committee. Additional folks will be added beyond the current extended cabinet that are part of the process. And those groups will start meeting by goal area to develop their objectives for their individual goals. Once we get the objectives in place in May, they will continue to work on the objectives a little bit, but we will start moving into both action steps and how progress is going to be measured. And those measurements will take quite a bit of fine-tuning, and so that will be a lot of work by the committees. We will continue that into June. And then hopefully by the end of June, the whole plan will be completed. The plan itself is going to be housed in Assembly, which is the program that you all use for your board meetings. It's a really dynamic module that they have for strategic planning, and it will interact with your board agenda as you all choose for it to. But it will be a way that as the data is put into it, it will track your progress through your strategic plan. And as you move through the years of the strategic plan, you will be able to add additional action steps and measures and objectives as you complete things and as the district starts to progress through the plan. I'll be happy to stop there because I know you all have had a long night and you have one more agenda item, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions, Madam Chair, if anyone has a question.
Thank you so much for that. Ms. Hauser and then Ms. Smiley.
I have a question on, this is a great start. I'm glad we're going to get into some real measures. That'll be really fantastic. I think one of the things that would really help us is to challenge us to think differently and to think innovatively. And so is there any part of this process where you bring to us best practices or emerging practices in public schools, either in the state or in other places, that we might want to consider as we do our planning? So not just kind of the same old language, but really one that always comes to me is Wake's elementary support model, where they did a true equity-based funding in their elementary schools. That's just an example, but I just was curious if you're going to bring any best practices from the outside that might really stimulate us to think a little differently.
That is really not our role in this. We act more as a facilitator to make sure the process is moving along and that everything fits together and there are not conflicts within the plan itself or duplication within the plan. That is really the work of the committees in setting their objectives and their action steps to do that research to find out what they want those things to be.
Smiley.
Also excited about seeing this start happening and that it's happening. One thing that has been really challenging for this district over time has been how we gather community input, and I would say also probably teacher input and staff input on our plans and how we're doing things. And so I think the listen and learns were a great start, and COVID kind of hit that, and but so many times when we sort of solicit community input, we get a really, really narrow slice. We either just don't get very much of it at all, or we get it's disproportionately our white families. So even when we were like starting the superintendent search and getting feedback, we saw like the demographics of that were really not representative of the schools. And so I know that we're doing this initial form on the website. I do think it's so important to get our communities and school communities input and really have their voices be a big part of what the belief statements are and really what sort of the goals. I'm not sure the difference between a goal and objective, but something in there. So I'm wondering if there's something to either if there's more we can do on the front end to sort of get to more different voices in this initial phase with the input on the website, or if we're planning on doing more once we have some early drafts, like around the stage the board would be looking at goals, to go out again and share those and get input at that point.
We can try. I will say, obviously, in COVID, where we can't do in-person community forums, it's very difficult to do some of this that way. This is also on what I would say is a super fast timeline. We were supposed to do this over the course of an entire year, and now we're doing it over basically 5 months. And so, I mean, I think it's going to be really important for the district to think about, are there ways to just, and I think this is a good start with the information that has already gone out so that people know that the district is engaged in this. They can start paying attention. Nothing is finalized until you all vote on and what our suggestion is that the board only vote on the beliefs, mission, vision, and goals, because everything else below that will change over the course of the 5 years. That those are the things that get locked in. And that's why we always say this is draft, and it will stay draft until you all approve it, so that we can keep taking that feedback in, and hopefully as you have board meetings and we come and present to you where we are in the process and what the different committees have come up with and what the goals are and how things are starting to fit together, that if the community has any concerns, or even if they like it, that they will let you know that.
And so if I may jump in here too, Mrs. Smiley, just spot on. You raised a very good point, and one that I'm sure Leanne and Nancy can tell you that we talked about early on, and that is the importance of, this is not a plan for a central office. It's not a plan for just, this is the community's plan. It's the village's plan. And the village won't own the plan. The village won't see themselves in the plan if the village isn't involved in the plan. And so we are racking our brains to come up with strategies to better engage the community, particularly the part of the community that has been marginalized or feels as if they've been marginalized. How do we get the voices of across this district to weigh in and give us their feedback? And so that is our challenge, is one that we're up for, because we know how important it is to get the buy-in and get the input so that we can all own and we can all help to actualize the plan. And so we're open to ideas. It has to be all virtual, we'll do virtual. I mean, some of the ideas have been to leverage community boards at places such as Walmart and Food Line and other marketplaces, how we could leverage PTA meetings, or just reach out and have focus groups, leverage the faith-based community and other organizations in the county. But getting broad-based input and buy-in and feedback is critically important. So any ideas you have, we would certainly welcome. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Any other thoughts or burning questions? We have less than 10 minutes left, and we have one more item. So I hate to rush through this because it's so important, but I also am mindful of our time. Any other thoughts? I am not seeing any. So thank you so much, Ms. Black and Ms. Winter, for being here with us today. And we look forward to hearing from you again on March 8th.
We will see you then. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
So the final item on our agenda tonight is the Orange County Climate Council and representatives from our district. By action, I don't think it means that we actually all have to vote on this, but I would like to appoint someone to this council and just wanted to ask first who on the board would like to be the rep, and then hopefully the district can define which staff member will serve on it, and hopefully we can start a conversation about student representatives as well. I know that the council meets monthly from 3:30 to 5 p.m. on the third Thursday of the month, and I attached sort of the mission and vision in the agenda tonight. So unless anyone has any questions, I just kind of wanted to see who might be interested in doing that and available. There, Ms. Smiley.
I could. I'm available at that time and would be happy to.
Is anyone else interested? Is everyone good with that? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, Ms. Smiley, you are our Climate Council representative. Thank you so much for volunteering for that important council in our community. Dr. Felder, I know that Ms. Pitts used to be the representative. Are you thinking that Mr. Hester will now be the representative once he gets started?
Yes, ma'am. He's actually started, and so we're very happy about that. Yeah, he started last week. I would just like to confirm with him if that's okay. But
absolutely.
All right. And so unless he has a reason why he doesn't think this would be a good fit for him, we will nominate him.
Perfect. And then the Climate Council is also looking for student representatives. So maybe if our high school principals could help us come up with a student or two who would be interested in serving for the remainder of this year on that committee, that would be wonderful. And so I will just touch base with you about that in a non-meeting setting, but thank you everyone for that consensus. And with that, unless Dr. Felder, you have anything else?
I do not. Thank you.
I will just thank you all for a robust discussion this evening, and I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Ms. Stevens. Is that right? And a second from Ms. Smiley? Couldn't really tell who that was, but we'll just call it that. Mr. Atherton?
Yes.
Ms. Doyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hauser?
Yes.
I vote yes. Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Ms. Smiley?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
We're adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One that my partner changed. I can resend the hill.